Hi, my name is Jonathan Hicks. I'm back at the Dice Cup, and this evening I'm joined by
Steve, Mark,
Nick. And we've just finished playing On Mars, which is a heavy euro from Vital Lacerda. And obviously it's about being on Mars. Now, one important concept in this game is that there's two halves of the board. It's essentially a worker placement game. You sort of have your workers and you plonk them on spots to take actions. But you can either take actions in orbit, which is this sort of section of the board, or on Mars. So all the action spaces down here you can do when your guy is on the Mars side, and there's a kind of a rocket or shuttle that sort of shuttles between the two, and you can hop into orbit and then potentially take actions on this side. Now, it's a sort of point salad. There's lots of different ways of getting points, but if I go through some of the actions and I'll try and give you some indication of how you're getting points. Part of it is obviously you can see we're building this various structures. You start off on one of these bases here, so I was blue in this case, and you're gradually building and expanding on Mars. And there's various types of resources. So you've got oxygen and plants and water and energy, batteries, I think, and minerals. And they correspond to certain kinds of buildings. So these are like energy buildings that produce energy, and this is an oxygen building that produces oxygen. So you're trying to expand this, ultimately though, to achieve objectives in various ways and get points. So to go over some of the actions, for example, if I perhaps start on the Mars side. So here, this is a way that you can build one of the things on here. You pay the resource cost, so if you wanted to build a energy building, you'd have to pay minerals, for example. And then you kind of plonk it on the board. You have these little robot guys, and you have to move these guys around to the right place first. You can only build kind of on or adjacent to where they are. So moving them around is an important consideration. You can do that with this action here, and you also have a rover, this sort of big thing that travels around much further and collects various tokens. These tokens appear on the outside of the board, and you can go here to pick up these tokens. This will let you build a plant building, so that's quite a useful one. This one, it will let you upgrade your technology track. Technology track? Well, on your board, you have a track here, which effectively says how good various different technologies are. So for example, the plant buildings here, this is at the +2 level, which means the size of grouped plants can go up to 3, because they start off as sort of default at 1, but you can see there's got a group of 3 plant buildings here. Every time you build one of these, using the action over here, you're getting plant resources. So that's another way you can kind of get extra resources. And again, there's objectives that make you want to do that. So you kind of want to move these around to collect stuff, as well as getting your robots in the right place to build the right things. This one is letting you build advanced buildings. Now, I'm going to have to jump around a little bit here. In the orbit side, you can acquire blueprints, and there's a whole pile of these, kind of an offer here, which will let you take existing basic buildings and upgrade them. So this is like an oxygen building. So on here, you could try and build one of your buildings and upgrade it to make it an advanced building. So you take this first, then this action here lets you put, you can see one of these buildings on it, and Nick managed to build lots and lots of these buildings throughout the game. They're quite powerful, because once you build it, not only are you going to get points at the end of the game, you can see you get 3 points if you manage it. Incidentally, if you fail, you lose 3 points, so you've got to make sure you can build it. But it also gives you an extra action that you can take. On your turn, you kind of take one of the main actions, and you get an extra bonus action here. So this would let you get another tech tile. Tech tiles are required from here. This is one of the orbit actions, and you kind of pay some resources and take the tile, and let's say it goes here. So when you upgrade them, you kind of move them up, and potentially you get extra bonuses. That lets you build another building. This one will let you get a mineral resource, and you're also getting points at the end of the game. You can see at the bottom here for how high your different tech levels are. That will get you 3 points for each one here, etc. Other things you can do are you can get a rocket and people. So you have a bunch of rockets here, and these, when you take that action, you kind of acquire another rocket, which can be used incidentally for moving you between Mars and orbit if you want to, but also they come with a pile of people, because you kind of run out of people as you go through the game. You put them on the various action spaces, and they tend to sit there. This is quite important. After you've taken this action, the guy doesn't come back at the end of the round. Potentially the shuttle goes up, let's say to here, and you can decide to go with the shuttle, and so you take your guy and you pick one of these spots here. This is like player order, and maybe a couple of people decide to go up to here, and then for the next round the player order will kind of go that one, then that one and that one. These guys will be taking actions on Mars, and these guys could only take the actions on orbit. So timing your movement with the shuttle is quite important so that you can take the right actions at the right time. So other things you can do, this is going to let you get scientists. The scientists are quite powerful because they let you make use of other people's kind of advanced action buildings that they've managed to unlock. So that's a handy thing to do. And also you get these, I can't remember what these called. What are these things called, Nick? Contracts or?
Contracts.
Yeah, so these things will get you quite a lot of end game points. So if you manage to acquire 3 advanced blueprints that build on water buildings, then you're going to get a whopping 9 points at the end of the game. But if you fail, you're going to lose 4 points. So you've got to be quite careful with those, because again, you can lose points quite easily. Now, another thing to mention is that when you build all these things, you also upgrade on this track effectively. The tracks represent how many of that particular building have been built. And as these keep increasing, once you sort of get to a certain level, the level of the overall station increases. And you can get extra scoring depending on how many buildings of different types you've managed to build. And different scoring will trigger each time that moves up. So that's another thing you can do. Just briefly then, some more of the orbit actions. You can go here to get tech, as I said. This is another way of upgrading your tech. You get to move 2 of your tiles up. You do have to pay resources at the top here when you upgrade tech tiles. You can just go to the warehouse and grab some extra resources here. But essentially you keep playing over a bunch of rounds until certain missions are completed. Now I think we've removed the missions off the board here because we managed them all. But now in our particular game, we've got any of the mission tiles. Nick, we just pass one over perhaps. One of our missions was to try and grab these things. One of them was to complete the contracts. One of them was, yes, to get the blueprint as well. And it's sort of mini bonuses. So this gives you different things to aim for each game, and also represents triggering the end of the game. Once enough of these have been completed by different people, that kind of triggers the end of the game. You also get private missions. In my case, I was trying to get certain tech tiles to certain positions to score me points. So you have your own private goals as well, which helps you give you a focus, if you like. Now that's just a very brief overview. There's an awful lot going on here, and a lot of kind of interplay with the mechanics and how the shuttling works. You really need to think very carefully in terms of, do I want to be in orbit to take these actions, or do I want to go with the shuttle down to here to take these actions? You only get your guys back off the board when you take the shuttle back to the area where they are, and then you get them back to start using them again. What do we think?
Wow, yeah, I didn't know what I was, during the teach, I'm like, I haven't got a clue what's going on here. And by the end of the teach, I still didn't really have a clue. And then once the first time was played, it kind of made sense. It makes sense what all the actions did, and that you needed to go with the ships and stuff. You just need to work out all those little things. And so with that regard, it's probably easy to get your head around in Lisboa. I think Lisboa is very difficult, and even once you played Lisboa, it wasn't obvious what all the things did. In this game, so obviously Lisboa is another Lacerda game. In this game, although it is difficult, it's not, there's so many interacting bits, it feels a bit more easy to kind of get your head around what's going on. There's no direct interaction with other people, but other people in the game will affect the game to your benefit or your detriment. I benefited a lot with my in-game scoring, benefited on a lot what Nick did during the game. He built lots of cards, so I got lots of scientists, and my scientists got me like 24 points in the game based on the cards that people built. Jonathan and Mark got some cards but failed to build them, which hindered them and hindered me a bit, I suppose, because I didn't get the kind of passive points of them. There's a lot going on here. The resources are tight. You've even got the option of, do you go with the spaceship? So I spent a lot of the time on the surface trying to kind of manage the amount of times I put my people out. If you put your people out too early, you don't get them back for quite a few turns. It feels like the overall level of the station doesn't increase as fast as you think it will at the start of the game. Jonathan and I both thought that, even though Nick at the end of the game said this is one of the ways the game can end, but it won't happen that way. And we're like, yeah, whatever. And I tried immediately to get some cubes down there, and I'm waiting for someone to build the other thing that will allow my cubes to score, and no one was doing it. It also limits how many rockets you can have, and so I wanted to get my rockets. I was access to Nick's action to build my rockets, but I couldn't because the level of the game dictated you could only have 2, and I'd already got my 2, so I had to kind of deviate to some other things. It is super thinky, but in a good way. It's actually probably my favourite Lacerda game.
Mark?
Yeah, I guess I'll prefix this. If you like Lacerda games, you'll like this. It's more of what it does with lots of interconnecting mechanisms. It's got some really good points. I actually really like the fact that your boss dude essentially affects which side of the board, what actions are available to you, and you have to prove that of, I might not be able to take those actions on the other side of the board for quite a while if I decide to not go the spaceship. There's quite a lot of a race in this in some extent. In the race for the good the good technologies or the good places, the good blueprints to put down, which are obviously affected by what goes on, which you may or may not like. And the symbology is actually pretty good. In the help cards, quite good. I will say exactly what Steve said. I didn't really know what I was doing when I went into the game. I don't think I really understand until about halfway through how I was going to attempt to get points. and by that point it's too late. So if I probably play it again, I'd do better, because at least I'd know which one I'm trying to funnel my interest to make the points. I don't think I quite hit that. Yeah, it's super heavy and thinky, which is good, bad. I do like the sort of weight, but I did find, okay, yeah, it was first game, so it's always going to be, that has to be said. But sometimes I couldn't really plan ahead, because ultimately what I want to do might be affected by how many people have already been on a spot. Essentially, if somebody's already been there, you have to pay workers or crystals to take it on some of the action spaces. I was like, I want that action, but I don't know by the time it's going around it's going to do to me, and whether I'll be able to access it. And there was some time I was waiting quite a while, like, for it to come around, because it is a heavy game and there's lots of, oh, that could be good and that. So yeah, it will be AP prone if you've with particular people, and it is obviously on the long game. It is a Lacerda game, so it's what you expect.
Okay, Nick.
So I'm a huge fan of Vital Lacerda. Lisboa is my favourite game of all time, I suppose, before this. So this is right up my alley. I love the game in the fact that it's very thematic. For Heavy Euro, there's lots of interaction, so it's not a multiplayer solitaire. I can use other people's abilities, I can use my own. You can leech off other people, you can shove other people's robots around and block them from doing what they want. So it's really great. You don't need a massive player aid booklet like you did in Lisboa, so that's a positive. You only have a little player aid, and I didn't look at it once, so that's a positive. The only vulnerability of the game, I would say, is that the pace of the game is decided by the players. So if you don't have people pushing up this life support track at a pace, it could kind of drag on a bit. You can kind of balance that with these mission cards, because there's two types of mission cards. There's long and short ones, so if you put in shorter missions, that can affect the game length, so you can kind of house rule it. But for me, it's a 10 out of 10 anyway. It's you know, an immense experience, and it's got, it just looks beautiful as well on the board. So excellent game.
Okay, Mark, rating?
Have to base it on the play that I've had, and I suspect it'd be quicker more, but because of the speed, I'd give it 6.5. Okay.
As long as I don't have to teach this to the next group I play with, I would give it a 9.
Wow. I really enjoyed it. Vital Lacerda is an acquired taste, I think. It's very heavy. And my issue with a lot of his previous games is it's very bland. I struggle to really engage with the theme. That's not the case with this one, though. I really did engage with the theme. I don't mind the heaviness at all. It is very AP prone, as they said. The downtime can be significant if you're playing with the wrong people, so bear that in mind. It was a little bit slow for me. But in terms of what I'm doing, thinking, and I love the fact that you've got to decide very carefully, do you want to be on Mars this round or in orbit? Because it completely affects your strategy. And the fact is, they were saying you can get stuck there for a couple of rounds. It's like, I'm going to have to take actions here. What happens if I run out of people in orbit? How do I get down? So lots and lots to think about. It's one of those games, it very much benefits from replay. You know, the more you play this, the better you're going to do. You're going to see how the various strategies work. Nick's played it more than any of us, and you can very much see how that works. He kind of has a good feel for what is going to score points, because that's the hardest thing. The first time you play, it's like, how in the world do I score points? Although there's an awful lot of stuff going on and lots of interconnected mechanisms, it makes sense. Thematically, I just got what I was doing, the various different types of buildings, how you get the resources. So from that point of view, I loved it. I thought it's definitely my favourite Vital Lacerda game. I would be on an 8.5 out of 10. All right, thanks for watching. That was On Mars.